Alright, so this is the second video covering the spoilers that we saw for Kaldheim this weekend. We did a first video covering Saturday's cards. We'll link that below, so you can check that out. This video is covering all of the cards that were spoiled on Sunday. So we're going to jump right in here. First up, we've got the commons. So we've got Draugr Thought Thief and Demonic Gifts. Now, Draugr Thought Thief is a 3/2 for 3 mana. It's a zombie rogue. When Draugr Thought Thief enters the battlefield, look at the top card of target player's library. You may put that card into their graveyard. This card just kind of seems meh to me. I mean, it has relevant creature types like most of the creatures in this set, so that's kind of cool, but you get to mill 1 card for a 3 mana rogue. That doesn't seem super great, right? Getting to look at the top card of target player's library and maybe keep it there adds a little bit of edge value, but this card isn't super great. Moving on, we've got the Demonic Gifts, and this is an instant for 1 black and 1 colorless. Until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Now, this card's alright. It's a limited trick for sure. It's not going to be used in any kind of constructed formats, but in limited, you want a couple of tricks like these to really add value to your deck. So being able to toss this sucker out in combat in response to a block, or in response to them declaring a blocker for a creature you're attacking with, being able to make your creature trade up with a bigger creature and then get it back onto the battlefield does add a lot of value to that sort of deck archetype that's really trying to push aggro while retaining a little bit of card advantage while doing so. So I think there's a place for this in limited. It's not super exciting, but it's definitely a card that will see play here and there in the right limited archetypes. Moving on, we've got a couple more commons. Now, this is Jarl of the Forsaken and Skull Raid. Jarl of the Forsaken is a 3/2 zombie cleric for 1 black and 3 colorless mana. Has flash, and when Jarl of the Forsaken enters the battlefield, destroy target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. It's also got Foretell, and you can play it for its Foretell cost for 1 black and 1 colorless. So this card seems pretty cool. There isn't any one particular ability on this card that makes it really stand out as something special, but what's great about this card is all of them together kind of makes it relevant, right? A 3/2 flash is nothing to scoff at least in limited, and then being able to flash it in, kill something else you've damaged with maybe a smaller creature this turn, and potentially either trade this for something or keep it around as another creature on the field in subsequent turns seems decent. And the ability to foretell this early and possibly capitalize on certain foretell synergies, while also keeping up the ability to play this at instant speed for only 2 mana during your opponent's turn when they're swinging in, seems like there's potentially a lot of value if there's the right cards to synergize this with. So I don't hate this card. I think it could be cool in the right deck, but I definitely don't think it's costed competitively enough to make the cut in any kind of constructed format. Skull Raid, on the other hand, is a sorcery for 4 mana. It's a black sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards. If fewer than 2 cards were discarded this way, you draw cards equal to the difference. And again, this has Foretell for 1 black and 1. This card's pretty crazy. I don't know if it's quite good enough to make the cut because 4 mana is kind of expensive. This is basically Mind Rot for an extra mana, which isn't always going to be great. But the upside on this card is the fact that if they don't have cards to discard, you get to draw. This is never a dead card in your hand, whereas a card like Mind Rot, the problem is a lot of times if they're out of gas on their end and they've played out everything onto the field, you don't really get anything for playing the Mind Rot. Whereas with this card, you get to draw cards. And I think this is a really interesting way to go about discard in a way that doesn't make discard feel so bad when it's kind of do nothing and you draw into it later in the game. So the fact that you can get some card advantage off this, the fact that it's never a dead card, and the fact that you can actually play it for cheaper for its Foretell cost all kind of come together to make this card possibly playable even in constructed. You're really going to want a deck that makes good use of discard and possibly even synergizes with the foretell mechanic so that you can really take advantage of everything this card has to offer. But it's possible that there is a deck that exists out there that this could actually slot into in a constructed format. In limited, I think it's pretty good, again, because it's never a dead card, and it can always draw you cards, or at least take out 2 cards in their hands. So, like, it's always going to 2-for-1 card advantage for you. In limited, you can afford to wait to pay the extra mana, so I think this is actually pretty good in limited. Moving on, we've got the last common of the day. Now, this is Icehide Troll. I think this card is actually really good. It's a 2/3 snow creature troll warrior for 1 green and 2, and it has pay 2 snow mana. Icehide Troll gets +2 attack and gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. Now, 2/3 for 3 isn't great, but if you're pushing snow, I feel like this could be a relevant creature on curve that then turns into a win condition later in the game. The fact that you can swing in with this and at any time have threat of activation to pay the 2 snow mana to make it a 4/3 that can't be killed because it's indestructible feels kind of powerful. You put your opponents in a very awkward position where, like, they never really want to block this because you'll blow them out, you'll kill their thing, and you'll survive it. But at the same time, if they just let it in, they're letting you kind of run rampant all over them. And in limited, a card like this, being able to do this is really powerful. The fact that you need to activate the ability after you declare attacks or blocks, because it taps the creature when you use the ability, needs to be played around, and I think it really helps balance the card out. But the threat of activation is nothing to laugh at here. Like, this card could do a lot as just a common. So I expect to see this in any kind of heavily pushed snow archetype that's running green. And I don't quite think this will make the cut in constructed, but the threat of activation is great, so who knows. Moving on, we've got the uncommons. So first off, we've got Provoke the Trolls, and we've also got Port of Karfell. Now, Provoke the Trolls feels kind of janky, to be honest. I'm surprised to see this at uncommon. This is an instant for 4 mana. It's 1 red and 3. Provoke the Trolls deals 3 damage to any target. If a creature is dealt damage this way, it gets +5/+0 until end of turn. So it's either really overcosted removal, or it's pay 4 mana to give your creature +5 attack if they can survive 3 damage. But also you're opening up possibilities for your opponent to blow you out by killing that creature as well. If you have a 5 toughness creature and you use this card on it to swing in and they shock it, they just 2-for-1 you. So, like, I feel like this card is trying to make up for its cost by being versatile, in being able to run it in like an aggro deck, and being able to have the option of having removal if you need it, or that extra bit of damage to get there to win the game in the later game. But in reality, I just feel like this is too overcosted for either side to matter, and it just opens up the potential for you to really get blown out and give your opponent card advantage. So I really think this card is kind of a trap and kind of janky, which is unfortunate. But the other card, Port of Karfell, is actually really, really cool. So this is the Dimir land, which comes into play tapped. You can tap it to add 1 blue, or you can pay 2 black, 1 blue, 3, tap it, and sacrifice it, mill 4 cards, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, I think this card might be one of the better lands of this cycle. You're going to want to run lands like this in a control deck that can drag out the game long enough that they can afford to then finally play this ability. And a card like this can really help you double down on like a win condition and pull just the right creature out of your graveyard on just the right turn, after keeping this in play as a land, just to help give you the mana you need to fuel your control and help you really keep control of the board. I think this card could be really good. It's definitely great in limited, being able to get anything back after milling. Like, you can pretty much get the best creature of the game back. You're gonna have enough time to play this in limited usually, right? So I feel like this could be really strong in limited. I feel like with just the right deck to support what this is trying to do, and a deck that's really going to drag out the game long enough to make use of this ability, an uncounterable way of bringing any creature from your graveyard to the battlefield seems pretty strong. Also, it's worth noting you don't have to activate this ability as a sorcery. So you can hold up counter magic, be playing the control game, countering spells, and all of a sudden at the end of their turn, they don't have anything to counter that turn. Now you pay 6, you sack this, you get your bomb out of the graveyard, and you start going to town on your next turn while still keeping up mana to control the board. I feel like this slots in really well, and I feel like this is one of the better lands of this cycle. Moving on, we've got a couple more uncommons. One, to be precise, this is Immersturm's Skullkarn. Now this is another land in the cycle here. This is the Rakdos land. So it comes into the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for 1 black mana, or you can pay 2 red, 1 black, 1 colorless, tap it, sacrifice it. It deals 3 damage to target player. That player discards a card. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. I think, again, we're seeing some of the better lands of this cycle today. This card in particular, it's aggressively costed, at least compared to all of the other lands, and it already slots into a deck that wants this type of effect, right? Rakdos is kind of running crazy in Standard right now. You've got Kroxa, you've got Ox of Agonis, you've got all of these cards trying to utilize your graveyard and trying to gain you card advantage, make your opponent get rid of the cards in their hand, while subsequently increasing the card advantage on your side by drawing cards or playing things from the graveyard. So I think this supports that really well. You do have to play it as a sorcery, but the fact that you can effectively get basically an extra Kroxa trigger off sacrificing this thing and having it be uncounterable since it's a land, and then also have this land in your graveyard, that way it fuels your ability to then escape more things in subsequent turns, really kind of adds to the edge value that this card brings. And honestly, the extra 3 damage could be enough to just close out a game for a deck of this type. So I feel like this card has a place potentially in Standard. Will it actually get used with the fact that it comes into play tapped? I'm not sure, but it does add a lot of value for not very much opportunity costs. So I think this will be really cool in the Rakdos decks, and it'll probably get used. Moving on, we've got the first rare of the day. Now, this is a rare that kind of leaked a while ago, so people sort of already knew about it, but it officially was released, and this is Blood on the Snow. Now, this is a snow sorcery for 2 black and 4. Choose 1, destroy all creatures, or destroy all planeswalkers. Then return a creature or planeswalker card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of snow spent to cast this spell. I think this card is busted. It is a little bit high cost for sweeping the board. A lot of times you can't wait until turn 6 to sweep the board against a really strong aggro deck. If you're not able to sweep on turn 4 or by the latest turn 5, a lot of times they can kill you before you can get a card off like this. But I don't feel like that's what this is for. I feel like being able to bring, say, potentially a 6-drop into the battlefield from the graveyard, basically for free, while also wiping the board of one side or the other, is really where the strength of this card is. I mean, being able to wipe the board and get your 6-drop that died to the wipe back into play immediately so that you can recover from the wipe seems strong. So I could see this in a deck where, like, you're using a lot of removal early on, and you're using a lot of either targeted removal or possibly an earlier sweeper, and then when they start to recover from that, you give them the finishing blow by bringing your huge thing back onto the field, completely resetting the board again, except this time you've got value on board, and it could do a lot. I mean, being able to bring like a Vorinclex back or a Dream Trawler or any kind of crazy 6-drop seems pretty powerful. while also stapled to a sweeper. And what I really love about this card is it's not a waste if you're playing against control, because at some point they're bound to play at least one planeswalker, possibly even more. So being able to sweep the board of planeswalkers as sort of a plan B. Oh no, they're not aggro, they're playing control. Normally the sweeper would be useless, but in this case, you wait until they play a planeswalker, you at least kill the planeswalker and then get a thing back into play. So there's a lot of value here, and the value against control is really going to matter, whereas a second sweeper in the mid game against aggro could make all the difference. So I feel like there's just a lot this card can do, and I'm really excited to see what kind of 6-drops this can really get paired with that can really bust it, because I feel like there's something out there that can really just make this busted. Anyway, moving on, we've got the Blood Sky Massacre. Now, this card was also leaked a while back, so some people already know about it, but it's officially been revealed on Sunday. So this is 1 red, 1 black, 1 colorless for a saga. Chapter 1 is create a 2/3 red demon berserker creature token with menace. Chapter 2, when a berserker attacks this turn, you draw a card and you lose a life. Chapter 3, add 1 red for each berserker you control. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. I think this card has the potential to be really busted. I mean, at the very least, you're getting a 2/3 menace for 3 mana, which isn't awful. And then you're getting added value. You can trigger Chapter 2 even with just that 1 creature and draw a card, and that doesn't seem so bad, even by itself. And then making 1 red mana the next chapter also doesn't seem so bad if you can just keep the 1 berserker around. But where this card really gets insane is if you're actually playing a berserker deck or a changeling deck where your changelings are berserkers and you're really going to town, like, you could get so many triggers on Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 here. You could just pull ahead by an insane amount, like drawing a bunch of cards, adding a ton of red mana, finding things to use that red mana for should not be too hard in a Rakdos deck. So I feel like this card has the potential to be busted if there are really good berserkers, and we've already seen some really good ones. We've seen the 2-drop that draws you a card whenever a berserker dies. So I think this card could be really, really good. I'm loving the sagas that we've seen so far, and if you're pushing aggro, especially berserker aggro, I think this card could end up being an automatic 4-of in that sort of deck. Moving on, we finally saw, this is the last card of the day, this is Birgi, God of Tales, and this is one of the modal dual face cards, and on the other side is a legendary artifact which is called Harnfell, Horn of Abundance. Now, this kind of looks crazy. Birgi, God of Tales is a 3-mana legendary creature god. It says whenever you cast a spell, add 1 red. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps or phases end. Now, this is a 3/3 creature, and it's actually got another ability. You may activate boast abilities of creatures you control twice per turn instead of once per turn. I feel like that boast thing is just gravy. Unless we see a lot of competitive boast abilities pop up in these last few days of spoilers, it seems like boast is a little bit more maybe made for limited. We have seen a couple of really cool boast cards, but a lot of them seem kind of overcosted. So unless we see some real contenders pop up in these last few days of spoilers, I don't know if the boast part of this card is really super relevant, but I also don't know if it has to be, because, like, honestly, just a 3-drop that gives you a red mana every time you cast a spell could be crazy. Now, we've seen burn decks in the past go out of their way to try to find cards that could just give them enough card advantage that they could play enough burn to just finish out the game when they would normally run out of gas. And this kind of card gives you the mana you need, but it's Harnfell on the other side that really keeps you from running out of gas. So Harnfell, Horn of Abundance is 1 red and 4 for a legendary artifact. Discard a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. So on one side, you can make a bunch of mana. Every time you cast a spell, you're making another red mana. And on the other side, you're making it so that you can discard a card to exile the top 2, giving you the ability to then play both of those cards as long as you play them that turn. So I feel like together is where this really shines. If you can get both of these cards out, both sides out at the same time, like, you can really chain them together and go off. It'll be really interesting to see if the right kind of support for a deck like this is baked in, where if you get one or the other, it's still really great. It really needs just the right support to do that. But with the God side of this being able to generate you a bunch of mana playing spells, and then the artifact side of this being able to generate card advantage so you have something to use that mana for, it does seem like it's pretty powerful. It's worth noting that you can discard as many cards as you want. So if you happen to have 3 cards in your hand and you discard 3 cards, you can exile the top 6 and then play all 6 of those. And if Birgie's out, all 6 of those will give you a red mana each. So you can chain together a bunch of spells this way. Not to mention put a bunch of cards in your graveyard, because if you're discarding these cards, they're in your graveyard to fuel like escape costs and other things that want cards in your graveyard, but then also all of the cards that you're playing that you exile off the top, as long as they're not permanents or lands. If they're instants or sorceries, they're going straight to your graveyard too. So it seems like there's a lot of different ways you could potentially use this card. And I'm really excited to just see how this is going to slot into certain decks. I absolutely guarantee someone's going to try to make a red burn deck that really puts this card to good use. But it'll be interesting to see if someone tries to go like double color, triple color, and really make some kind of deck that utilizes both sides of this in an interesting way. But that's all the cards that we had on Sunday. We'll have another spoiler video up pretty soon detailing all the cards that came out on Monday. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. We are pushing hard for that 1,000 subscriber mark, so please consider subscribing. Hit that button. There's a circle in the middle over there. Hit that, subscribe, tell all your friends to do it. Thank you. Also, give this video a like so more people can see it. If you'd like more PlayStation and console game coverage, we've got that down below. And if you'd like more Magic the Gathering coverage, there's more of that somewhere off over that way. Do all the things.